Let's talk about, you know, we sit here and we talk about catching the bad guys and putting the bad guys away and all that sort of thing. But let's just talk about prevention for just a moment. What can the average citizen do to prevent being a victim, if I can use that phrase? John?
You start out by thinking about it, because as soon as you begin to think about it, you become aware and you start undertaking the steps necessary to minimize the likelihood. That's everything from when you park your car at a shopping mall late in the day, when the likelihood is that you're going to be coming out after the hours of darkness. Look for a light in that shopping center parking lot and park accordingly. It's not a factor when you're walking in broad daylight, but it will be in the evening. Wherever possible, travel with somebody else as you walk around. Make your home the least desirable target for a burglar. Trim bushes and shrubs away from windows. Harden the target. An alarm system is a great thing to have. It was within
the dog make a difference?
Dog does make a difference. Absolutely makes a difference. A dog that makes a lot of noise will scare off.
Rottweilers make lots of difference.
A dog with a deep voice is critical. Absolutely critical. But again, I think that underlying element of awareness will go a long distance because it gets people thinking. If you're not thinking about it, you're looking down at your feet, you're not aware of your surroundings in the outside world, you're prime target for to be a victim of a crime.
Sheriff Bonner, you see that differently?
No, I say ditto to that. And I think what John says is that crime prevention starts with awareness. And then, as we become aware of our own environment, then what I'd like to see us do as a community of people, then expand that. Then begin to work with your neighbors, work with your children and their friends. You know, that there are a lot of prevention strategies that involve those. We talked a little bit about, you know, neighborhood watch. It's a great tool if you get enough people involved. If people really care and get to know their neighbors, that's really, I mean, you can take the name and the trademark on, put it aside, but really it's about knowing your neighbors.
Who's in the neighborhood?
Who's in the neighborhood, who belongs and who doesn't. Mm-hmm. And if we do that, if we take our personal awareness that John talked about, expand that into a community awareness, and really become our brother's keepers in a sense, it's huge. And I guess that for all of us in this business, we would go, if you see something you think is out of the ordinary, call us. Please call us, because if we don't know, we can't go. But if you let us know and we go, and if it's totally innocent, yeah, dust the person off, no harm, no foul. Right. But on the other hand, you know, if there was a reason that you thought it was out of place, and we want to be called, and we'll go.
You know, one of the things from time to time, you watch television or you listen to the talk shows, and you hear about the phrase bumping, that most of us don't know really what that means. What's that phrase mean to you all in terms of home burglaries when somebody talks about the bumping technique?
Bumping can be used not only for home burglaries but for auto theft as well. It's the grinding of a key to make it adaptable to fit the lock for which it was not necessarily intended, and thus provide access into a car, home, boat, RV, whatever the case may be. It's one of those areas where we know that the crooks can do that. So again, in terms of hardening the target, light that doorway, trim the shrubs back, have an additional secondary lock that can be activated from the inside without a key for fire escape purposes. Car alarms, again, where you park your car. It's just another tool. With or without the ability to modify a key to that degree, the crooks are going to find ways to take your property. That's how they exist. So you need to do everything you can to be aware of that potential and act accordingly.
Well, Sheriff Bonner, let's go ahead and talk further about that, though. What should the average viewer do, those people who are watching this program, what should they be thinking of in terms of how do they go about minimizing the risk of being burglarized?
Well, I think there's a lot of resources available to people from their sheriff's department, police department, to harden the target, as John said. You know, let's talk about locks. Let's talk about alarms. Let's, make an investment in that. I think also, as far as when you do lose something, the ability to recover it's huge. So identify those things, photographic evidence, videotape, whatever it is. Inventory your property. Have it identifiable. And then, again, I think that we can all take some measure of responsibility and protect our property. And there's just a lot of different ways, from the locks, from the windows. And then again, I always go beyond that. I always go beyond that personal responsibility to kind of a neighborhood responsibility. Let your neighbors know. Get their help and you help them.
Right. Now, we've talked about neighborhood watch, and we've talked about locks, and talked about where you park and the kind of defensible. Let's talk about child safety tips, though. most of us are afraid to let the grandkids play out in the front yard without somebody that, when I was a kid growing up, I got on a bicycle and went across town, and my parents weren't concerned when I was an hour late getting home because, I could have stopped to play catch along the way or something. But that just doesn't happen the way it used to, or at least when I was growing up or when you gentlemen were growing up. So let's talk about children's safety tips from the standpoint of what the do's and don'ts are from your standpoint.
First of all, you want to deprive the child predator the opportunity to victimize your child. It's enormously important. Think about how they travel around. I think it's very important, and when it comes to this element, there's no such thing as a good neighborhood or a bad. The potential exists everywhere, and the risk is your child could be abducted before you have a chance to know about it. Minimize that likelihood by having, at the very least, children travel together. Have them be aware of the fact. You hate to take that element of innocence away from them, but realistically, at some point, they need to be educated and enlightened as to the fact that there are people who want to bring harm to them. They should be aware of their surroundings. They should understand the notion of recognizing license plates on cars, recognizing unusual behavior, and have some kind of a plan in advance, somebody that they can turn to. I would venture to say in most residential neighborhoods, their safety would be very adequately addressed if they went and knocked on the door and said, somebody's following me, somebody's bothering me. And again, you very much hate to deprive them of that element of innocence, but it's reality. You talk about the idea of being able to ride your bicycle across town. I think we all grew up that way. On Saturdays, my parents wouldn't see me all day long, and there was no concern at all. My kids, who are 21 and 16 now, have never known that world. And frankly, that is maybe seemingly insignificant, but it is a deterioration of the quality of life that people can enjoy because they don't have the freedoms and liberties that I had as they grew up, that all of us had. And so, but along those lines, I think really orienting the children into the idea of being aware of what's around them. And as painful as it may be, let them know that they need to work towards their safety.
Sheriff, let's talk about, for just a moment, Jessica's Law was put into place in California several years ago. Let's talk about it. You have a Jessica's Law site?
We have a website available. We have a couple of things, actually. We list our offenders, and we also have a program, Offender Watch is what it's called, and basically when someone moves in the neighborhood, if you're signed up, they send you an email that a registered sex offender has moved in there. But what I'd like to kind of talk about is kind of piggyback on what Dave said. I mean, this is really important. We have a threat posed to our community and our children from offenders and unknown offenders, quite frankly. But the reality, too, though, I think, again, I'll go back to awareness. Be aware. You need to be aware that most sexual abuse is done at the hands of a family member or a trusted friend. A large percentage.
So it's not someone who's just just swept off the street. That's the rare.
But it does happen. It's terrifying because the boogeyman is out there, and we see cases nationally that are just terrifying and sad, and they have a horrible ending. But at the same time, the majority of these offenses are, a relative. It's somebody that that's invited into your house, that's going to watch your children. So, I mean, how do you prevent that? I think that it may sound terrible, but I think we have to become less trusting. Does that make sense?
Sure.
I guess it all ties into that loss of innocence, but you have to be more concerned about people that you're allowing to have access to your children. And I think that's the hard part. That's so hard to accept for people like us who grew up in just a different community.
Let's talk about, for just a moment, let's talk about, we see the things about the violence that occurs in schools. Anything that we can do as parents to make our schools safer?
I think fundamentally recognize each of these instances we've heard of at shock and horror about kids who have gone on campus and brought harm to others. There should have been some predictable consequence to that, or component, I should say, to that. Their behavior should have been such that triggers should have been activated. Again, get to know the kids and know your own children and recognize symptoms that may contribute to antisocial behavior or indicate the likelihood of antisocial behavior and intervene appropriately. In spite of the fact that the term school shooting has become a household term, they are still incredibly rare. And in fact, I think it's safe to say that schools are among the very safest places anywhere, certainly in this community. Nonetheless, when something like that goes wrong, the consequences are so horrible that we need to recognize any level of symptom before it takes place and intervene accordingly.